Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our 2021 Youth Summer Summit. And we are prepared with a great panel today. So I am going to let everyone introduce themselves and we'll just get right started. So we will start with Jalen this morning. Oh, you're muted. Sorry, Jalen.
Okay. My name is Jalen Ashford. I'm a senior, going to be a senior at Lakota High School. And
Okay. Thank you, Jalen.
are we supposed to introduce our names first?
It doesn't matter. Either one is fine. Jalen, I think everyone could hear you. You're at Lakota East for your senior year.
Yes.
All right. Who's next? Thank you, Jalen.
I can go next if you want
Okay.
me to. Hi, everyone. My name is Camille Jones. I am currently the development manager at a nonprofit called Elements. It's a hip hop cultural arts center. I have lived in Cincinnati most of my life, and I went to Purcell Marion for high school, and I graduated from the University of Cincinnati. So yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Janaya Gray. I'm going to be a junior at Anderson High School next year.
Thank you, Janaya. Nana, you want to go next?
Yeah, I'm Nana, and I'm going to be a senior at Seven Hills next year.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Nandini. I just graduated Seven Hills. I'm part of the Telus scene along with Nana.
Thank you. Lawrence, I can see you next. Good morning.
Good morning. How y'all doing? So we just doing intros, Asia?
Yes, we're still at introductions.
Sure. So I'm Lawrence Kane Jr. I am an author, self-published author of 3 books, and I am the CEO of Abundance University, which we provide financial literacy for both teens and adults, and we also provide financial coaching for both personal finance needs as well as business.
Thank you. Autumn, good morning, and William.
Good morning. Hi, everyone. Excuse me. My name's Autumn, and I am a Master of Social Work student at the University of Cincinnati. And I'm interested in going into individual and family therapy, working with Black people to help destigmatize the Black family.
Thank you, Autumn. William, good morning.
Good morning. My name is William Roberts. Graduated from Xavier University, and I'm currently getting my master's at University of Kentucky in architecture design.
Thank you, William. Okay, so today, this is a youth-led summit, so I have plenty of questions, but I really want to start off and make sure that our youth get to ask all of the questions that they have. We're going to have 2 question and answer segments today, so we'll have one in about 30 minutes, and then we'll have another one at the end. So we'll get started, and my first question is for Lawrence, and then we'll jump into our youth questions so that I can be sure that I get to hear everything that they asked. They've worked really hard to prepare, for this summit today, so we're really excited. So Lawrence, you mentioned you're an entrepreneur, financial advisor, and an author, and I know that you have experience in the banking industry. So how did that influence you to start your own financial business?
Right. So actually, after literally 3 days after I finished college, I started in banking. And I think it was a pivotal decision for me because I didn't know about money, right? I knew how to make it and how to spend it. That was kind of the gist of my financial knowledge. So working at the bank really taught me the ins and outs of understanding how to budget, how to even have a relationship, and what does your relationship look like with a bank. It's not just about depositing and withdrawing. You know, you have bankers, you have financial advisors, you have different products and services that they can provide based on what you're trying to do with your life. So it's just important that I was able to first learn that so that I can then teach it, right? So it's very important. So if you don't have a relationship with your bank as far as like a somebody who works there, then I think that's something over the next 6 months that all of you, no matter how young you are, start developing that, because relationships can carry you further than your resume.
Thank you. Thank you. So Autumn, I have a question for you as well. So when you were in your, later years of high school, did you know exactly what you wanted to do? And did you feel like you had someone guiding you to find a career path?
So the answer is no to both of those questions. So when I was in high school, I actually wanted to be a cosmetologist. And then maybe going into senior year, I'm like, okay, I think I want to go to college. I went to a real inner city school. No one really had any idea of what long-term goals should look like. We had guidance counselors who helped us apply for college, but we didn't have any career exploration courses or anything like that, or have anyone come in to really talk to us. So there weren't a lot of people who actually went to college. And when I first came to UC, I still didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I mean, it just kept changing as I just, continued to learn and just like grow as a young adult.
Thank you. I'm going to let our youth ask some questions now too. Anyone would like to ask any questions for Lawrence or Autumn?
I have a question for Lawrence.
Okay. And then Janai, we can take your question next too.
So what are some kind of programs that you would want to see in a high school setting relating to finance and other skills that aren't necessarily related to kind of the core curriculum that's already there?
Sure. So we do a lot of financial literacy based on our books that we wrote called Money Seeds. It's a lot of principle-based literature. So really just building a foundation. So people ask me how young should we start financial education in schools? And I mean, it can go as low as kindergarten, right? Like when you talk about, like, I want everybody to understand that finances is literally basic math. It's addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Like that, I mean, that's the core, right? When you look at how much money you make, when you get a job and they say, hey, we're going to pay you $15 an hour, you start to calculate, okay, if I work 40 hours a week, $15 an hour, I'm going to get X amount of dollars, right? And then you say, well, I make that, then how much do I keep based on my bills? So now you have to subtract the bills. So it's that can be taught literally in first, second, third grade, right? So that's one of the things that we want to, start pushing, right? And how do we do that? Well, we have to show up to the Board of Education meetings. We need to show up to city council meetings and really, make a big push. We can't depend on superintendents who already have their money, right? They're making, close to six figures, if not more. They don't understand the importance of it. Some of them just don't. And that's not a bad thing, right? Because our school system is set up for testing and making sure you get the best scores on your test. Financial literacy isn't on that test. So how do we promote it inside of the schools and really make it a part of the culture? We do that by, again, showing up to the meetings that matter. And then also utilizing the resources that we have, like an Abundance University or any other company that, supplies it. That I think that's the number one thing that we can do is be advocates of it. If you live in any neighborhood with a high school, then it's our duty to force that, because we know the importance of it, right? Like how many of you knew how to balance a checkbook or knew how to pay bills as a senior in high school, but then you go to be a freshman in college and they give you student loans and credit cards, and like it's like we weren't even prepared for that. So we want to get them as early as possible, and then it's just gradual steps to you'll never it's a never ending journey. I'm 32 years old, and finances is still something that I'm figuring out, being married with 3 kids. So I hope that answered the question.
Thank you, Lawrence. Janaya, I saw that you had a question as well.
I did. I had a question for Ms. Autumn. Why do you believe there's such a stigma in the Black community concerning mental health? And what made you really want to target the Black community when it comes to mental health and working on being a therapist in the Black community?
So I think it relates to a lot of different things. I don't want to get super technical, but I think it dates back to slavery as to why a lot of Black people have the mindset that they do. Our families were destroyed back then. Black men were taken away from Black women. And I think that as time has went on, we have the strong Black woman stereotype, and a lot of women think that they don't need men, and a lot of Black people just don't really foster relationships with one another. That's why we have so many single parent homes. We have so many Black people living in poverty. And then when you do try to talk about mental health, there's a lot of people say, oh, you just need to talk to God. You just need to go to church. I know my grandma used to say that all the time, and she didn't even go to church. It's like, girl, who told you that? So, I think it's just something that's really generational, and it just keeps going on and on and on. And people really just don't want to break those cycles. And then also, what made me get so interested in mental health was maybe a couple years ago, I was just wondering why I was acting the way that I was. And I just really wanted to get to the root of my problems, or not even problems, but just why I am the way that I am. So that's what made me really dive into mental health. And then also, from what I was saying before, that standpoint of the fixed mindset that a lot of Black people have. I grew up in a single parent home, and as I left my mom and came, because I'm from Columbus, so as I left and came down here to Cincinnati and just really started to grow as, I don't know, a young woman, I realized how my mom is so set in her ways and stuck in that mindset that she has. And I just realized that a lot of people that I grew up around are like that. And while they may not see anything wrong, but it's they just don't know how to think more, dream more, want more. And that's not, the legacy that I want to leave. So that's where it all stemmed from. And I just want to help people just change their mindsets. And I feel like they don't know how, and they don't know how to advocate for themselves because they don't have that basic knowledge. They think that their situation that they come from is just, the end.
Autumn, thank you. Does any youth have any questions right now before I ask another question for Autumn? Nope. So Autumn, how did you come to the decision of what you decided that you wanted to do? You are in social work now, you're getting a master's in that, you've already gotten your bachelor's degree. So how did you decide, okay, I want to do midwifery, I want to be a doula? What did that look like?
Yeah, so my bachelor's degree is actually in journalism. And while I was in undergrad, I was working in home health aid, working with a lot of people with behavioral health issues, just to, sustain. And after I graduated, I worked in marketing, digital marketing, and it was just so boring. And I knew that mental health and just kind of blogging about it, I guess, was a fun hobby that I had. But I don't know, one day I just had this wake up call, no, I want to take this to the next level. This is what I want to do. So I just started looking up things how to get into mental health. And you can take the mental health counseling route, or you can take the social work route. And I decided the social work route just because I care about like advocacy and community. So it was just more broad when it comes to that. So that's where that came from. And then like the doula stuff, it's just so crazy how it just kind of all intersects. So like I care a lot about family strengthening. And so I have a 1-year-old son, and I had a pretty smooth pregnancy, but my labor was very traumatic. And I just felt like I wasn't being heard. And it was a lot. And 2 weeks after he was born, I was back in the hospital because I had an infection. And I kept telling the doctor, I was in the doctor's office every day for those 2 weeks. I couldn't put my shoes on. Like my legs were just so swollen because I was retaining so much water. And they just kept saying, it's normal, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, it's not. And I ended up back in the hospital because I just knew that something was wrong, and I checked into the ER and they admitted me immediately. So I was there for about another week. So when I was pregnant, I knew what a doula was, but not to the extent. I just kind of figured I couldn't afford one. So I didn't even try to reach out to any, but I would do a lot of research. So I was pretty aware of like what could happen as I went into my labor. So after all of that, and then like just the first couple of months of him being, here, I'm just like, I really want to get into doula work. I think it's so important that we have more Black doulas and things like that. So I completed a training with Planned Parenthood of Southwest Ohio as an abortion doula. So I do that. And then I'm currently working on a postpartum doula certification. And I think that postpartum doulas are real important because I had an emergency C-section, so I couldn't really get up and walk. And then also with what I was saying, how I was retaining so much water, I could barely move. And the way my apartment was set up at the time, there were steps that you had to walk up. So even when people would come over, I could barely get downstairs to open the door. So I think that having that support in that postpartum phase is very important. So that's really why I want to get into that work.
Thank you. And you recommend that students do research in order to figure out, what field it is that they want to go into or what it is that they like.
I feel like once you start to figure it out, things will just start aligning.
Thank you. Thank you. So I have another question. Actually, this is for Will, and I'm going to come back and ask you the same question as well, but we're along those lines. So as far as meeting people, that you feel comfortable with, that you can be vulnerable with to help you learn things. Will, you are in a sorority, or you are in a fraternity, I'm sorry, and Autumn is in a sorority. So how did it help you being in a fraternity to meet people that you could be vulnerable with and create those new relationships that you may not have had, when you first started college?
So with the fraternity and sororities, everybody had a like-minded goal. So you feel like you're on the same page to connect with each other already, without having to talk with one another yet, because of the values each sorority and fraternity instills, and to want to be a part of those organizations. Each person, of course, has those values that they felt like they connected with. So each person already has that connection with those values, and making it already easier to just communicate.
Thank you. And in addition to those values, there's also requirements to be a part of a fraternity or sorority, right? So how did you find yourself living up to those standards and, meeting the requirements that you would have to make in order to be a part of a certain organization?
Yes, so there's GPA requirements, and just wanting, like, of course, doing research and figuring out what it takes, and just having that drive and knowing that you want to be a part of these great organizations, for yourself, for your future, and to be able to make an impact in the community as well.
Thank you. So Autumn, I have the same, sort of question for you. And you spoke on this with your digital brand of mental health, about how being in a sorority allowed you to be more vulnerable with your peers and to understand that, you weren't necessarily always being open in your relationships and that you wanted to change that with your friends as a young person?
Yeah, I didn't realize how closed off I was until I joined my sorority. Like, me and my line sisters, we had to rely on each other a lot. And I actually had gotten like fired from my job from being with them so much because I just wasn't being vocal. And at that point, I'm like, okay, I think I was 21 maybe. And I'm just like, this is something that you need to work on. Like, you're a young adult. And what was the second part of the question?
How did that help you to create those vulnerable relationships? And how did it allow you to understand that you needed to be, more open in your relationships?
Yeah, so I just realized how much I was like self-sabotaging. I thought that being that person who just seems so hard on the outside was the way to be. And I realized that it's okay to lean on people. It's okay to rely on people. It's okay to cry, it's okay to be emotional and express how you feel. And it doesn't change who you are as a person. Being vulnerable is actually, one of the greatest strengths.
Thank you. Thank you. I wanted to ask that because I think, our high schoolers sometimes they still face those stigmas that you can't be emotional with each other. You can't be, quote unquote soft and etc. But like you said, it's very healthy to be able to share your feelings with other people. So Lawrence, we're going to jump back to you and ask a question. So how does entrepreneurship and ownership create opportunities that allow students to have those prevalent and equitable futures for themselves?
Yeah, so I think, again, it goes back to what I said earlier, like relationships. So in entrepreneurship, you have to build relationships. Like, you just can't sit behind your screen and, do business. And I guess I'm speaking specifically for me, even though I do a lot of virtual things. I have to make calls. I have to go to events. I have to, when I do one-on-one coaching, I have to be able to, listen to their needs and not just give them what I feel they need. But then also it goes back to like being able to employ the next generation. So I know for some of you, especially those who like kind of graduated or are in their master's program, like, that those summers where you're looking for internships, it feels like everybody's fighting for the same positions and the same jobs. Whereas if we create our own opportunities, we can then start to funnel people to our jobs. And like, if you're trying to do customer service for a Fortune 500 company, maybe somebody who has a need for social media management and you're doing customer service from your house, making money, learning the ins and outs of that for a small business, that's equally important. And you can put that same, experience on your resume. And then, for me, I started entrepreneurship because my skill set didn't equate to growth in a lot of corporate America companies. Like, I'm just somebody who I can speak well. I do a lot of presentations. So the company that I was working for, they just didn't see that as valuable. So they kept me in the same position. And I was like, look, I got a family. Like, I'm not about to just, be okay with this. So, fast forward, 4 or 5 years. And, again, I have tangible things that I can, sell, with the books. I have services that I can provide, both in person and virtual. So I think it's just super, super important that, if you have an entrepreneurial spirit, then I say tap into it. And if you don't feel bad, because entrepreneurship is popular right now, but it doesn't mean that it's the only thing you should be doing. Like, if somebody asked me to work for them, if it made sense, I would be an employee like tomorrow, like if it made sense. So I'm not just stuck on, I have to be a business owner for myself. I almost was forced into it because my family needed me to be more for them. So.
Thank you. And I think that kind of touches on a question that Camille had, which is, can you describe that moment in your life that propelled you on the journey toward creating Abundance University?
Yeah, so specifically, I literally had, in 4 years of working for my last company, I had 3 supervisors. Like, so, you know, I'm thinking every time I'm like, all right, next evaluation, I'm going to be able to possibly get a promotion. It never happened. And then I specifically said, hey, let's start going into schools and teaching them about financial education so that our default rate on our student loans can decrease.
Okay.
They said no. I'm like, well, my community needs this because we had 50 and 60-year-olds calling in, and they were co-signers on $50,000, $60,000 worth of student loans, and they didn't know the difference between a routing number and account number. So you can almost foreshadow that the person that was the borrower in school didn't get that information, you know, that they needed to excel in life after they graduated. So, you know, through counsel and being a part of different organizations in the city, I decided to start Abundance University. So I was still working full time and, you know, building Abundance University part time. But that was that moment. It was like, look, I can't wait for, again, and it goes back to even in the schools, right? We can't wait for them to make financial literacy a mandated curriculum piece. We have to go in and say, look, this is what's needed. And we like, how can we make this happen? We're not asking for permission like that. And that's where it gets a little tricky. So that's how I got started. It was out of, I wanted to do this for the company. They told me no. So I created my company.
That's great. And I have another question. You kind of spoke on this already. So what was a trend that you saw that students needed to stray away from, or a trend that you see now that you've really been able to advance yourself with your own business? What is a trend that you see that students make financially that they really need to stray away from?
I think there's like three things that you really want to like focus on. Number one, being self-aware. Like, what makes you spend money? How are you? What's your relationship with money? Because you have some people that they grew up not having a lot, so when they finally got money, they just spent it rapidly. You have some people who, you know, they had a lot of money, and then when they get to college and they don't have as much, it's hard for them to kind of cope with that. Like, hey, I'm a broke college student. Like, it's okay. We all been broke college students. Like, don't feel bad about that. You know, so number one, you have to have self-awareness. And if you don't do that, you jeopardize spending money and getting debt that you don't necessarily have to. That's number one. So after you become self-aware, you have to stay on offense. So even if you're in college, you still should be applying for scholarships, right? College is only expensive if you're the one that has to pay for it, right? If you get scholarships and grants and fellowships and, you know, those things where you don't have to pay back, then it's worth it, right? And then the next thing is that you have to build good relationships with people that agree with how you're going to build your financial journey. You shouldn't be around people that's going to laugh at you because you say, oh, that's not in the budget this month, right? Like they want to go out, they want to go to spring break and put it on their credit card. Let them. That's on them, because you don't want to go, you want to leave college with as less debt as possible, right? And then even as an adult, you want to keep good financial behaviors, right? Like, I think about what I want to spend my money on before I even get the money. And that's not, people think that that's a bad thing. It's not. Like, having a plan for your money and giving your dollars direction is something that we all should be doing, because once you get the money, you don't then try to make the plan. It just won't work like that. You'll spend money on stuff you don't need. You'll do things out of, just impulse. And you don't want to, again, you don't want to be 30 years old talking about, man, I wish I would have did it differently. Like, you don't have to. Like, you're still young. Most of you all are in your early to mid 20s. So take advantage of the time that you have. Make those adjustments, right? Be around the right people. Follow me on social media, even if you can't be a one-on-one client. Like, we have different things. I post, Asia tell you, I post a lot of free game on my social media. Like, listen to it, buy my book, the book only $15. Like, invest in yourself, and then, as you grow, then you just increase those investments.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Lawrence, you, just a moment. You mentioned earlier, you had 50 and 60-year-olds calling in and asking you things about, loans that they had co-signed for, but they didn't even necessarily understand, the factors and what was involved. So what advice do you have for parents who are in the process of, preparing very young children or children who are about to go on to the next level for college? What advice can you give them financially?
Yes. So, I mean, number one, you can set up different funds for college. In Ohio, we have the 529 plan. So you can dabble into that. It's an investment account for educational purposes. So that you can have a UTMA, which is a minor custodial account. So, especially for somebody like Autumn, right? Autumn has a 1-year-old. Autumn can set up a UTMA right now, put $25 to $50 a month into it. And her son, you have a son, right, Autumn? So your son, you can determine if he can touch that at 18, 21, or 25. And with the UTMA, he can use that for anything. If he wants to start a business when he's 18, he can do that. If he needs to pay for things for college, he can do that. And remember, this account, it earns interest. So if you're spending or if you're contributing $50 to $100 a month, it's going to build up over these next 17 years. And however much you put in, it may mess around and double because of the interest. So those are some things that we can do for our kids. But I also want to say right here, Asia, that we have to take care of our finances too. Like my goal is I need to be debt free before my oldest child is graduating high school. Too many times we have parents still paying their debt. Then, then we trying to pay our kids debt. And then it's just this snowball effect to where it's like, some people really will never be out of debt because of how they've set up their system. So it's like, as a parent, get your finances together, whatever sacrifices you feel like you can't make them, because it's going to benefit. Like, don't think about 2021, think about 2041. Where do you want life to be then? I'll be in my 50s. That sounds crazy even saying it, but my kids will be older. I want to be able to help them financially and help them with the relationships and that I've accumulated over the years, right? I want to be able to say, hey, my daughter, I have 2 daughters. Hey, you having a baby, go see Autumn, right? Like that's how we have to build up. But if if I'm not doing what I need to do, or if I'm not building healthy relationships, I can't even help my kids. So I say that would be my advice.
Sorry, I'm on mute, you all. Thank you so much for that, Lawrence. I know that you have a class today, actually, right?
Yeah, it's at 11, so I got a little time. It's virtual too. They switched it to virtual. So
okay,
if we got some more questions or however you want to do it, I could be on to about 10:45.
Okay, I have one more question for you, actually. And then I'm going to transition to a question for Autumn. And we also have a little bit of time for the audience to ask a few questions. So to our audience, Lawrence is going to be heading out to go make some more young students financially stable. So make sure you ask those questions before he heads out in about 10 minutes here. So actually, I wanted to ask a question as far as what program are you doing today? What is it that you do in your high school finance program?
This funny. This one is actually for adults. So we just finished up for the students. We actually have our Money Seeds program. So depending on how the school sets it up, we can be there for the whole year. We can be there for a week. We can be there for a semester. But we teach our principles based on 6 pillars. So we're going to teach you the earning principles, how to earn money, what it looks like. We're going to talk about how to manage the money, right? Because you don't want to be making 6 figures but live paycheck to paycheck. That's a real thing in America. So we're going to teach you the managing principles. We're going to teach you investing principles. So not just investing in stocks and bonds, but how to invest in yourself to make sure you maximize your peak earning years, right? I'm 32. I'm in my peak earning years right now to where I can maximize my energy and my time so that when I'm 55, 60, I love y'all, but I'm not gonna be speaking to y'all kids. I'll let my kids be speaking to y'all kids. That's just how I want to set up my life, right? So we're going to talk about investing. We talk about relationships, because again, relationships can carry you further than your resume. We talk about goal setting and mindset. So those are our 6 Abundance University pillars that we teach both adults and students. Today, I'm working with some entrepreneurs to set up their business finances. So a lot of times people that work full time, when they start their business, they think, hey, if I just make $3,000 a month at my job, then I just need to make $3,000 in my business and I can quit. That's not smart, number one. And number two, that's not sustainable. So you actually need to double how much you actually need. So we're going to be talking about how to set up business accounts, different marketing strategies, and also how to read your numbers when it comes to your revenue, when it comes to how should you be spending your money on a daily and weekly basis, and how to, almost plan for unexpected expenses. So that's what I'll be doing today for a group of entrepreneurs who are starting group homes in the city.
Wow, that's excellent. That is excellent. So actually, that leads me right into my next question for Autumn, who also has started a nonprofit business with a beautiful concept. So Autumn, could you tell us a little bit about your business venture? And then speaking on networking, which someone else also asked about, Lawrence, you keep pushing on this, meet people, talk to people, get to know people in your field. So how did you start your business? Are you in partnership with someone? And how do you spread the word about, what needs your business serves, Autumn?
Yeah,
I know
so
that was a long question.
you're fine. So I co-started a nonprofit called Change the Cycle. So we donate feminine hygiene products to the local women's shelters in Cincinnati. So we just became like an official nonprofit this year in 2021, but we started these drives back in 2018. So I'm really passionate about women's health and just femininity in general. That's where that came from, and I just really like to give back to the community. So that's kind of where the idea came from. And then my friend who I partnered with, so she is a chef. So what we've been doing the past few years is we set this drive up around holiday season, and a lot of people, they either donate monetary donations or physical donations. And at the end, so maybe right after New Year's, we'll go to Sam's Club or wherever and just buy a bunch of products, and then we'll go out and donate them. And then we take all of our donors' names and we do random raffles, and then she makes plates for them. So that's what we've been doing the past few years. And each year the drive has just gotten bigger. This past year, we had over $5,000 worth of products. And it was just really overwhelming. So we decided that we wanted to, take it to the next level. So we decided to become official, and we want to actually educate the youth on, just like personal hygiene. I know what made us want to, target the homeless population specifically is because when you think about being homeless, you think about, okay, you need food, you need clothes, but there's a lot of women who probably don't have, adequate access to nice products. Even when you go to a public restroom and, they have the machines in there and you put in like 50 cents, they're really bad quality products. They're like cardboard, and no one wants to use that. And so that's where that came from. And also, there's a lot of government assistance out here, but they're for food. They're for, housing and stuff like that. You don't really hear much about toiletries. So that's where that came from.
Thank you. So we're going to keep in touch with you so that by the time holiday season rolls back around, everyone can make sure that we double your donations in 2021. So Camille, you had a question as well?
Yes. So my question specifically is for Lawrence. Thank you, Autumn, so much for sharing that. That's an incredible cause. So Lawrence, what would you say to youth, especially young women, about retirement, especially considering the disparity in financial compensation for women in the workforce? Would you have any advice for people to start retiring now? when would be the best time to do that, specifically for women too, just because there is a tendency traditionally for women to be paid less. And in the past, women were really dependent on like the male figures in their lives, maybe their husbands, to be that financial supporters.
Right. No, that's a good question. Number one, I mean, you see what I got on, right? Like, so I'm a big advocate of, making sure we invest in y'all, not just financially, but just every need that y'all give us, right? So I would say, you want to start contributing as early as possible, right? Like literally when you can start investing towards retirement right now. I don't care if you in high school still or you're in college. You can start an investment account towards retirement. You can start as low as $25 a month, and really just, again, give it 40, 50 years. Just think of somebody like Benjamin Franklin. Before he died, he gave the city of Philadelphia and the city of Boston $1,000. They couldn't touch it for 100 years. And then they could only touch a percentage of it, and then they had to leave the rest of it for another 100 years. So he died in 1790. Long story short, in 1990, both cities had over $2 million, right? So what if we did that for our family, right? You put $1,000 in an investment account now, and your family can't touch that, right? Or you can't touch that for 50 years, 60 years. That's how you have to think of it. So start early. As women, we have to continue to push, for equal pay, right? And it's important to educate the people around you about it, because it's not just like it's not on the surface, right? People don't understand how the inequity in pay happens, right? And we have to educate people on that, at all areas of life. So continue to be the advocate of it. But again, when you do get paid, pay yourself. That's part of paying yourself first, is putting it in an investment account. And again, don't worry about touching it. And remember, peak like earning years. Like we are in our between 18 and 40, you're in your peak earning years. Don't spend money on things that don't matter, right? I struggle with that even to today. I look at shoes too much. I'm a sneakerhead. I love shoes. However, in the last 10 years, I've only paid over $100 for 2 pairs of shoes. And I probably didn't bought over 80 pairs of shoes in the last 10 years. But I spend smart. Like I don't buy some Jordans that just raffled off at 10, right? Today. I'm not buying them. They cost $200. I don't want to pay $200 to look like somebody else. That's just not smart for me. So, use your money wisely. Obviously, we have some battles that we got to fight with inequity in this country. So that's just something that's going to be an ongoing thing. But the money that you actually physically touch, put it in places that's going to benefit you now and in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we are actually in a few minutes here, we're going to be moving to a new segment that will include our senior historian, Mr. Westmoreland. He's been here with the museum since the museum began, and he has a really amazing story to share here tonight, or this morning. So in a few minutes, we'll get that started. Lawrence, I want to thank you very much for coming in today. Where can students reach you if they're looking to, get more coaching or just follow you on social media, buy your book? It's a great read. It's very digestible. We also did an interview on that, I think maybe 2020. So
you're right.
Constantly working. So where can we
So I always say for my young people, wherever you spend your time the most on social media, whether it be Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, whatever, follow me on that. My is Lawrence Kane Jr. That's my handle on every social media platform, even YouTube, because we have a YouTube channel. If you listen to podcasts, we have a Money Mondays podcast, over 100 episodes on that. And then as far as, working with me or buying the book, you can go to abundanceuniversity.net. We have apparel. We have the books, and if you want to do one-on-one coaching. And I'll tell you what, if any of you need to do a quick, we can do a quick 30-minute call. Just email me from the website or whatever, or, text me. Matter of fact, I'll put my number in the chat. Like, I don't mind giving out my number. But we can set up a meeting just because you're connected to Asia, who's like a sister to me. I'll give you a free 30-minute session. So, let's do it like that. So hold me accountable, right? By holding yourself accountable.
Yes, we're gonna make some young, financially steady people in 2021. So thank you again very much for your presence here today, and have a great class and a great rest of the weekend as well. And Camille is actually going to be, are you heading out right now, Camille? No, okay, sorry. I thought Camille's got something great to do as well today. So Lawrence, you have a great one, and we'll see you next time.
Same to y'all. Y'all take care. And my young people, if y'all better tap into Mr. Westmoreland, like a true historian in our city, man. You don't get too many gems like that. So tap in. I'm jealous that I can't stay. So, but Asia, thank you. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I'm gonna send it to me. So thank you, Asia, for this opportunity. Young people on here, whether you just graduated or you're still in school, remember that financial success and any success that happens on purpose. So continue to be intentional, man. And I appreciate y'all being on here today. So y'all take care.
You too. Autumn, thank you for pouring into us this morning. We might ask a few more questions about mental health as the program goes on. I actually did want to ask one more question, but we're going to get started with Mr. Westmoreland because he's here on the line, and then we'll circle back around to ask those questions about mental health. So good morning to you, Mr. Westmoreland. Thank you for being here today. You are on mute. Just a moment. Yes, sir. Just a moment. We're going to get you unmuted. Okay, just a moment, everyone. We are getting Mr. Westmoreland, making sure that his line is secure. But here at the Freedom Center, Mr. Westmoreland is responsible for doing a majority of the research and the process of getting the slave pen here in the museum. And the museum was founded in 2004. And this is one of the largest artifacts of American slavery and history here in the country. So feel free to ask any questions in the chat for any of our panelists, and we'll make sure that we get around to them. And give us just a few moments to get situated. Autumn or Lawrence has left his number in the chat for everyone. If you're looking to, make that connection to get your finances stronger and more steady. So actually, while we get situated, I have a question for Nana. So Nana, you are a part of Telus magazine, right? So you want to give us, a breakdown on like, what is that magazine and why did you all start it?
Yeah, so we started Telus 2 years ago. This past year was our second year. And basically our purpose is to encourage and spotlight youth and their brave expression. So we put out an annual magazine with a theme each year. So this past year was Metamorphosis. And really, we try to provide a space and a platform without any financial barrier. So yeah, if you want to apply to be a part of the board, applications are due August 1st for anyone who wants to help put together our magazine for our third year.
Thank you. Speaking of the chat here, there's also a link in the chat to buy Lawrence Kane's book. And then for the magazine, we're gonna try to find the link, and is that on the Kennedy Heights Arts Center website, Nina?
I can throw it in the chat real quick.
Okay, so we're gonna put that in the chat. So any youth or parents who have young artists and young writers, pass along that information so they can get themselves published. So we have Mr. Westmoreland with us here today. So, Mr. Westmoreland, tell
Yes,
us a
ma'am.
little bit about your process of getting the slave pen here and the resistance that you faced. How can students stay strong in their pursuit of an equitable future when they get resistance from other folks?
Try that again so that I don't get any further lost than I am. Okay.
Okay, no problem. So I wanted to know, what was your process of getting the slave pen here in the museum, and how did you deal with the resistance that you faced and staying strong in your pursuit of an equitable future, even though everyone wasn't excited about what you were doing at the time?
I think all of us were equally as lost, and consequently, um, people who were uh, in other positions uh, decided, well, let's let him fail on his own, and then we'll move on. And I had good assistance, and I also had a legitimate product, so that as we began to explore it, and with the assistance that we got from people in the community where the slave pen was, we found that we had something that everyone thought had disappeared. There were thousands of them because in the process of uh, the growth of America, we moved people from the coast, from the East Coast, all the way out to Texas, if you can imagine. So in the process, we moved over 1 million people because after 1808, you couldn't bring black people in from Africa. So what we did was take black people that we had in Maryland, in Virginia, in South Carolina, and in Georgia, and we moved them. We moved them as they didn't need them, or put it this way, as they were needed more so in other communities, because the native people, there were not enough of them to meet the needs of the settlers who came in from Europe, and there not only weren't enough, but the native people, be honest with you, were smart enough. It was their country, and they were smart enough to just say, "Fine, you can have it. We're not going to stay here and be abused and taken advantage of." So consequently, we had to bring people in from other places, and primarily that was people who had been brought here initially, and then as they began to meet the needs that were needed, for example, in Maryland and Virginia, to plant and harvest tobacco, there weren't as many needed as there were initially, if I'm making sense. Question? I hope I haven't put everyone to sleep.
Oh, we are wide awake, Mr. Westmoreland. Like Lawrence said, this is you are a gem in the city, and I am definitely grateful to be able to have you here this morning. And you talked a little bit about these transitions and people migrating from one place to another. And when you were a young man, out of childhood, when segregation legally ended, how did that change your community? Did you notice changes in the culture around the country? What was that like for you?
What it was like was, to be very honest with you, white people weren't happy about it. Black people couldn't figure out to what degree the absence of open racism was going to develop, and so every day was a test. Well, I went here yesterday, and people just sort of looked at me like, "Well, why are you here?" Or "When are you leaving?" And then you go back the next day, and the experience the day before sometimes improved, sometimes got worse, but it was a day-to-day test, and you could go back 5 years later to the same place and with the same owner. And quite often, they had decided, well, I want his money. I don't want him, but I want his money, so I'll tolerate him, if I'm making sense. So it's been a day-to-day experience, and it's an experience that works on how well did the first experience go, and quite often, most of the time, it wasn't openly violent, but it was, if I'm making sense, it was a test. Did I make money? Did he behave in a way that didn't harm me? Or I'm never going to adjust to this. I don't like it, so I'm going to move. Or I'm going to get my friends and we're going to make sure he doesn't come back. But that was not as often as initially you would have expected. When I was a little fellow, it was ugly. And quite often it was violent. And it was within 15, 20 minutes of where I'm sitting now. Now that community is not only open to Black people, it's totally Black. And then there were others where white people just moved. There were communities in the third instance that decided, well, if you don't harm me, and if you just don't bother me, if you just don't put your hands on me, or if you just don't say anything to my daughter, I'll tolerate it. So it's something that has gone over a period now of 40 years, and bit by bit, it's gotten better, and in some cases, bit by bit, it's never going to change. It's never going to get better because when the white people came here, they wanted the native people out of. They wanted their land, and they wanted free labor, and anything else was unacceptable to them. But that was not as often as it started out being. So it's like life itself. You work at it, and it depends upon how white people and Black people decide they're going to deal with each other, or are we going to deal with each other? So it's something we're still working on.
Thank you, Mr. Westmoreland. I have one last question for you. So, you shared that we know that it wasn't necessarily an easy transition to go from, a segregated world to a desegregated world, but these stories really need to be told. As a young person myself, and for students that we have here, how can we talk to our elders about their experiences? I think there's a stigma that we, shouldn't ask too many questions, or it can be seen as disrespectful to ask certain direct questions to our elders. So how can we get to know those stories that really give us courage to know that we can keep fighting and that our situation honestly could be worse? And how can we, take courage with that?
I think we have to understand, and that we being older Black people have to understand that if we don't share our experiences with those of you who are younger, then we are doing irreparable harm to you. Harm that's probably greater than the harm being done by whites who wake up in the morning with the understanding any encounter I have with Black people is going to be negative. But we have to share our experiences that we've had because we're older, and we survived it. We survived it physically, and we survived it emotionally, even though it wasn't pleasant. It's also important that you who are younger understand that the only way there's going to be a tomorrow for you, for us, is it that we share our experiences, good and bad, and talk about how that's just a part of life, and it's not pleasant, but it is something that we learn to work through, and we can always go home. We can always go back to church. We could go wherever we can find someone who looks like us, who's had the experiences that we're having, and who's willing to sit and talk to us with a clear understanding that our experience in America started out difficult. And it's always going to be different than that of white people. It's just part of what we have to learn to live with.
Thank you, Mr. Westmoreland, for your time today. There is some information on the side of the chat here about the permanent exhibit of the slave pen, and the museum is open Wednesday through Sunday, so you all are more than welcome to come in to see the slave pen here and our other beautiful galleries in the museum. So, Mr. Westmoreland, thank you so much for your time today. Mr. Westmoreland is a true gem, like Lauren said, here in the city. And he is here sometimes throughout the week. So if you all get lucky, you will be able to stop in and get a lesson from him. So if you all have any questions, his information is online at our website, freedomcenter.org. And like I said, that's there in the chat. So we're going to move on to our next segment, and that is with William and Dr. Childs. I'm really excited for you all segment as well. And before we move on to that segment, Autumn, I wanted to ask you a question based off of Mr. Westmoreland's stories and, what he shared with us. How can we cope with sharing these traumatic stories and these negative experiences that we have to tell each other for awareness, but also can be triggering and etc. to have to relive or talk about again?
Even though certain things that we hear can trigger something from our past, I think it's important that we do share negative experiences and that we do share, different things that we have been through to help other people not only understand what they may be going through, but to help them prevent themselves from certain things. I know when I see or meet a lot of pregnant people, they ask me, well, how was your labor experience? How was your pregnancy? And I don't like dive straight into the bad, but I do give a heads up that, my birthing experience was pretty traumatic, but if you're not comfortable with, listening to the story, I won't share it with you. But just to be cognizant of their feelings, but a lot of them do end up wanting to hear. And then the conversation just kind of always leads to how, like, things that you can do to prevent that or how to make the situation better. So I think that it's always good to share negative things or traumatic things that you have been through with other people.
Thank you. So we're going to get into our next segment now with Dr. Childs and William, and someone else is going to ask a question for Mr. Westmoreland. So give us a few minutes and we'll get back around to that. But starting off, I know that, Will, you are an artist and you also are an American citizen or an American, but you lived you've lived in Africa, which is your homeland. And I know that Janaya had a wonderful question that she wanted to ask that I was excited about. So Janaya, if you don't mind starting us off, and we'll get into this segment. And actually, I wanted you to correct me, William. Are you an American citizen? Is that something you prefer to be called? What is your preference? You're from Ghana, right?
Yes, I was born in Ghana, but I am I'm basically dual citizen, but of course I had to give up my African citizenship to be able to become American.
So I don't really know which question you were talking about me asking, because I have a couple of them, but I guess, should I just share all of them? Would you like?
Just start. You could start with your favorite, and then we'll get Mr. Westmoreland back on the line for a moment, and then we'll hop back into Will and Dr. Childs.
Okay. So one of my questions was, how has painting and expressing yourself through art changed you while becoming the person you are today?
Can you repeat that a little bit, please?
My question was, how has painting and expressing yourself through art changed you while becoming the person you are today?
I feel like I'm able to be that therapist for myself, basically, and while also being able to help others that are like me, growing up and trying to articulate their feelings in ways they don't know how yet, but being able to be that catalyst for others as well as myself, it's been like really, really impactful, because you learn more about yourself and as well as others. Is that, you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, that was the guy's question.
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
Yeah, that was the end of my answer. Yeah, you had another question.
Thank you. We're definitely going to get back to another question for Janaya. I wanted to lead into one more question for Mr. Westmoreland, as far as, our community. So in your opinion, Mr. Westmoreland, how has the Freedom Center contributed to social justice change in Cincinnati? Someone wanted to ask that.
It has not contributed enough, so that I don't want anyone to go away from the telephone thinking, or when I get there, everything in America will be the way it should be. It's not. But it's something we're working on. And the first thing that we've had to do is, and we continue to do, is make it clear what isn't and what's needed, so that all of us, regardless of our race or our background, can maximize who we are, and in the process contribute to the growth and the development of a beautiful country, but one like elsewhere can only be the best that it can be if those of us who are here are able to make our maximum contribution to its development and its continued development. And so the first thing that we've all had to do is talk about what we need to make a maximum positive contribution. And there are people who think, we don't need that. And we don't need it, particularly if it comes from someone who's not white. Truth is, we need everyone's contribution and everyone's positive contribution. And so that's something that we work at on a day-to-day basis. And it's a challenge, and most of the time it's a positive challenge. And so we work at it, and The people who don't either want us here or don't understand it, we have to work with them and they have to work with us. And it's an ongoing positive effort that, frankly, I look forward to each day.
Thank you, Mr. Westmoreland. So I really wanted to say I like that commentary about looking forward to this. This might be hard work, or, we may feel like, we're tired of the things that we're facing socially, but we have to look forward to change. We have to look forward to, being involved in our communities. And that's, the most that we can do, but that will make a difference. And people like Mr. Westmoreland, who are constantly, taking the effort and making the effort to be that change that we need, it will definitely, lead us into a brighter future, as they already have. So, Will, we asked Mr. Westmoreland a question about, social impact and social justice, but you won a beautiful artist competition, and that also allowed you to get some funding. So how has being able to make money from your art inspired you, and how can being an artist make an impact for social justice?
Being an artist for social justice can be very impactful because there's a whole lot of issues going on in this world that people are finding hard to articulate. But through art, I can express myself through various topics. So one of the major topics last year was plethora of topics was Black Lives Matter, COVID, and just dealing with like a whole new aspect of life. And people were going through a lot with mental health, and COVID being something very different we never experienced before. It was very pivotal to be able to express those in that manner of creativity, which you've seen all over the world.
So to follow up with that, how do you find time to create now? Is it homework for you? Like, what is your, day-to-day like as an artist?
Creativity just comes from being like, I want to say inspired, but because I get inspired a lot, but I'm also a poet. So if I'm not creating art, I'm writing about the issues going on in this world. So it's just finding the space when to actually, because people don't know that just because you create it don't mean you're not being affected by those situations. So it's like finding a balance of your mental health while also being an activist per se, or catalyst for other people to be able to share what's going on through creativity.
So what is it that you're studying in your master's program? Do you want to talk a little bit about that and why you chose that and how you're able to, intersect your art with your career path?
Yes, I am studying Master of Architecture at University of Kentucky. And growing up, I lived in about 7, 8 different places, and always seeing how architecture has impacted me as well as the community around me, from the projects to the refugee camp to suburbs to even college. All these architectural spaces are so different, but holds a huge impact in society. So being able to combine architecture, poetry, and design to be able to tell those stories of how impactful they are to our way of life, and how they have an effect on us in our future and now.
Thank you. Thank you. So we have another artist with us here today, Nana. So Nana, how has being in the Telus magazine, impacted you as a student, and how can you use your writing to help improve your community?
Yeah, so before I joined Telus, I was very different as a student and a person. I never really had many relationships outside of my immediate school and family. So it really gave me the opportunity to meet, you know, other youth who are as passionate about creating as I am. And also, like, kind of, it gave me the opportunity to engage in my community in events like this. So yeah, I think it's given me skills both in communication and organization that I'm going to take with me far beyond high school. And I think your second part of the question was about writing.
Yeah. So what's your writing process like, and how do you use writing to impact your community?
So I write kind of several different things. I write a lot of poetry, short stories, and I'm also really passionate about journalism. So I think my writing process is I try to write something every day, whether it's 10 words or 1,000 words. I just want to make sure I don't lose my connection with that part of myself. And the way it kind of I want to use it for the community is through my journalism. I've had an opportunity to talk with a bunch of different people around the Cincinnati area, getting their experiences, what they've gone through, kind of their unique perspective that I can bring into a profile or kind of a larger piece about an issue. So I think using art in that way, and then also using art as more of a means for expression, and taking this huge issue, which might seem very overwhelming to a high school student, and distilling it to why it's important to you in a poem or another short story. I think that's really important, so that you just don't feel overwhelmed with just all of these issues that youth are suddenly seeing through social media and the news. It's a great way to stay connected to the world while also maintaining kind of that creative part of yourself, not getting overwhelmed, and not kind of losing hope, I would say. So yeah, I think that's kind of my writing process, and that's why I think it's important for everyone to have some creative connection, whether they do it professionally or not.
Thank you. So another question that, that leads right into, so what do you feel like? Do you feel like you're a strong reader? What do you feel like, helps you with your writing and, being able to, study new forms and techniques and things like that?
Yeah, I love to read. Even before I was a writer, I was a reader. I think it's amazing that you could be sitting in your room and just imagining a world so different from your own. And that's also really helped me with my writing. I think the best way to become a good writer and a good speaker is by reading works by great authors. So that inspires my writing, all the books I read. And I also really do look to music to inspire my writing. I take emotions that I relate to from songs that I listen to, and then events and characters from books, and I relate them to my own story and what I believe to be my own journey, and I put it in a poem or a short story. And I think it's like a really cool way to like have these authors inspire you, kind of use their emotions, what they've gone through, to help process what you're going through, because everyone's different, but at the same time people go through the same things, and I think it's important that you take the experiences from others and try to kind of use that to inform what you end up doing.
Thank you. So, Camille, my next question is for you. So, I want to talk about how can students create, realistic pathways for themselves. You are in a career now, you're a development manager. What is your job duties, in short, and how did you end up, finding a career for yourself that you enjoy?
Yeah, so I am the development manager for Elements, Cincinnati's premier hip hop cultural arts center. And in short, my job duties just entail like grant writing, creating programmatic relationships with other organizations, helping to plan events. We're a team at Elements. We're a small organization with a small staff. So pretty much everything that we do, we all have our hands in. But yeah, so I help create events, increase our funding, do fundraisers, and just, I'm really instrumental in just making sure that the Elements outreach efforts continue to grow and continue to deepen within Greater Cincinnati. I got into this position, it really was a blessing. I was actually a member of Elements since I was in high school, and I came down to Elements for dance, hip hop dance, and poetry. So I'm a writer. And then throughout that time, since I've been there, I've grown to develop a family at Elements, and all the leaders at Elements have really been a part of my life and saw the growth in who I became as a woman. So I went to UC, had dual majors. I was a dual major in psychology and English with a focus in creative writing. And when I graduated, you know, you do the jobs that you do when you're in college, part-time jobs, part-time work. And I graduated and I was still doing that, like teaching dance and working like odd jobs and things like that. And then during the pandemic, actually, as I was still teaching dance, but it was virtual, obviously, I was able to have the opportunity to be given a position as a grant writer for Elements. And from that point on, that was around like September, it was like August or September, something like that. From that point on, I was hired on in January full-time to be the development manager. So we've been going through a lot of shifts just in leadership, hiring new staff and things like that. But yeah, that's kind of how I got into this position. And from there, it's just been like, you know, hit the races. Everything's been moving so quickly with all these changes, and I've had to adapt really quickly. But that's what makes it really exciting. And I also feel like I have the added pleasure of being a part of an organization that I'm familiar with. So that helps a lot with dealing with all the changes and learning new things. I'm very grateful for the opportunity too, because I feel that I'm gaining so many tools that are applicable for every part of my life. And I still am able to be creative. And I totally agree with what Nana said about having that creative connection. I think it's so necessary, whether you're a writer, you're a dancer, you're a chef, if you love doing makeup and want to be a makeup artist on the side or just professionally, I think it's so important to be able to still tap in to that creative spark in your mind, and never neglect that. So yeah, that's what I'd have to say about that.
Thank you. So Janaya, I'm going to come back around to you, and then I have a question for you, Jalen. You were in the youth docent program, and there was a really rigorous curriculum. How could doing a program like that, you know, at your own will, help you with something like entrepreneurship or budgeting or being creative on your own time?
Well, at the Freedom Center, being a youth docent allowed me to learn really good life skills and how to make really good connections with people. Yeah. So that allowed me, when it comes to like interviewing or negotiating, when it comes to a workplace or something like that, the docent program really allowed me to develop some really good fundamental skills for that. And it also gave me a lot of different options and topics that I could possibly pursue as I get older. So some possible careers. And it really goes into just learning about yourself. So you have to learn about yourself before you kind of decide what you want to do in the world. And so it kind of helps prepare you in that aspect.
Thank you. Thank you. So Jalen, you were also in the youth docent program as well. And, you know, you and I have had some conversations about, you know, what studies it is that you're interested in, you know, what things really piqued your interest when you were in the youth docent program. So you talked about doing some studies on affirmative action, and you learned about how some of these things and, you know, studying other cultures can help defy and beat stereotypes. What did that teach you?
Well, basically studying affirmative action, which I did for this research project we did at the recent in the year, since I was in the AP language and composition class. We're doing extensive research and figuring out that implicit biases, since really more explicit racism isn't really prevalent in around me. And in many of the places that I go to, you really don't see the stuff like from the 1960s, or maybe even some of the stuff that you see on television as much in my daily life. So instead, but I do see that a lot of kids don't know about like the civil rights history and I guess don't have respect for it, is what I would say. And that they also, um, it's more that we all have implicit, I figured out, I found studies that say that we all have implicit biases. So since I don't see explicit racism at the school, that may be that by implementing things like ethical studies, which I researched a little bit along with the affirmative action, that can help to basically defy stereotypes and help people to know other cultures better, so help them connect with each other. And I got this idea kind of from studies that were done by Patricia McGueener, I think her name is, and she did a study at the University of Michigan. How like basically most of the people that went to the University of Michigan, they'd come from places that were mostly either white or mostly black, and then how those experiences having a diverse class help to destroy stereotypes and also to help their kids become friends with other people as well. And so I kind of got inspiration from that, I guess you could say. And so I took that and I thought, well, ethical studies would be, ethnical studies would be a good way of eliminating implicit bias in school, bringing people together, so that we can all basically move to a better future, I guess.
Thank you. Thank you. I have some more questions that I'm going to ask you about that. We're going to get back to the rest of our panelists here, but we have a performance by Kayla Betts. She is a poet with Elements, and she is here to perform an original piece for us. So Kayla, I will let you take everything away, and thank you for being with us this morning.
Of course. Boy number 1, race, white. He says, "Oh, it's a shame my ancestors couldn't keep yours in chains. And it's humorous to watch the tears of pain from glimmering hills in the corner of your eyes. How dare you try to gain the rights I was given a rise to new heights, the entitlement." He says, "All of you are such ungrateful, ignorant thugs. If you people would work a little harder and lay off the drugs, then perhaps you wouldn't have to rob and loot and scavenge for every minute excuse for your failures. So for heaven's sake, yeah, you get murdered, but it's a small issue. Get over it, snowflake." Pause. Fast forward to boy number 2, caring with honey, no, more like maple syrup skin. Oh, the beautiful melanin in his bright green eyes. I told boy number 2 about the threats of boy number 1, who promised me protesters with the bullets of his guns. Boy number 2 was concerned for my life. He said, "Protesting for my rights, is it worth risking my life?" I laughed. Knowing anyone who knows me knows I think otherwise. I told boy number 2 I wasn't worried about the threats of boy number 1 because the power that runs in our blood is stronger than any bullets in their guns. I told him about the murder of Coran Charles, which parallels that of Emmett Till, and how an officer argued that my cousin must be selling pills to afford such an expensive car. I told him that brutality and abuse cannot be ignored. I cannot conceal this feeling in my core obligation to stand up for this right. I want to share with all of you what I learned from boy number 1 and said to boy number 2. When you're met with hatred, ignorance, and threats, when the school kids want to make a bet that your dad will end up in prison and your brother in a gang, when you hear of Black young men hanging from trees near deathbed of suicide in 2020, Robert L. Fuller, Nevin Baker, Willie Brown Jr., bodies left hanging in the breeze. When you start bawling, think a man that could have been me. When Derek Chauvin caught Rittenhouse post bail and the police fell again, made the proper arrest. When Trooper 45 were making a mess and putting our people under distress. Look back at where we were and how far we've come, how strong we are. We're far from done. Keep running towards your goals and sprinting for your rights. Keep jumping the hurdles and fighting the good fight. Accept no one and nickel since they true to who you are. Know when to observe and when to get up and march. Let no one define you. Need no one's acceptance. Flaunt your beauty and showcase your intelligence. Don't let anyone limit you, not even yourself. Always make the best of the cards you are dealt. And when you're met with hatred, ignorance, and threats, know what they truly fear is your success. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, that was excellent. Thank you so much. That's an original piece by Kayla Betts. Before you hop off, Kayla, tell us a little bit about yourself. What grade are you going to? What school are you at? And how did you get into poetry?
Hi, I'm Kayla. I'm a rising senior at Walnut Hills High School, and I first got into poetry this past year. One of my teachers is the coach of our LTAB, our poetry team, and I joined just as an after school thing to do, and I fell in love with writing poetry again. And I met a lot of cool poets, and we worked together, progressing up to Louder Than a Bomb, which is a local poetry competition. And I've been writing poetry ever since.
Okay, well, seems like you've been doing this for your whole life. It was excellent. Naina, Kayla, you all get to know each other hopefully after this program. You all are both young writers, and I would love to see, how you all can collaborate and to see if you could get something in Telus magazine, but I'll let you all handle the rest. We're gonna jump back into the summit. Kayla, you're welcome to stay if anyone has questions for you. Otherwise, have a wonderful Saturday and the rest of your weekend. So jumping back into the program with our questions. So Jalen, what do you imagine a program to look like in ethnical studies? Is that something that you imagine in your school or outside of your school, parents being a part? What does that look like for you?
I would think that it would be a course in the school, preferably optional. Probably would receive more resistance if it were to be required. And I've seen through my school that really just through how the school system is these days, most kids are really just looking to get work done and aren't really trying to learn the material. I even talked to my physics teacher about this since I was in honors physics last year for my in 11th grade. And just seeing that, I think having it instead be an optional course, but of course, put more importance on it, emphasize it, and so that more kids would know about it and may be interested in pursuing or having that course as some of the classes, as one of the classes they have. And yeah, so that's how I kind of think ethical studies would be. And then for, I guess, what the class would totally entail, it would be more of like an emphasis on, I guess, showing, getting deeper into civil rights, other movements, other cultures, not only the African American culture in this nation, but also other cultures as well as the struggles of other minorities such as women or Latinos as well as African Americans. So that way, it's not only just a focus on the struggles of African Americans in this nation and giving like a total view of that, but also the struggles of other people in this nation. Because I feel like we don't really focus that much on those topics, which are really important to know about. when you do like your U.S. history class, or even if you do AP U.S. history.
I'm talking to myself on mute. So I have one more question for you, Jalen, but I'm going to go into a question for Dr. Childs, and then we're going to get back to a question for you. So Dr. Childs, you are a history professor and you teach educators. So just to get right into it, how does education free us, and what's the importance of college these days in a culture that is, DIY and content creation? There's just so many outlets where you don't necessarily have to go to school anymore. So why should kids continue to go to school?
Education is freedom. During slavery, enslavement, they worked really hard to keep African Americans from learning how to read in the South, in particular, because they understood that education is power and education is freedom. The more we know, the less we're slaves. And so Frederick Douglass said it himself. Once he began to learn how to read, even though he might have been enslaved physically, he was no longer a slave. And so that was really important, because he could understand now. He could read about, in that time, he could read about the coming Civil War that would ultimately end up with slaves being free. So as it relates to today, knowledge is power. And so in terms of a college education, you can learn, if you have the right guidance, one can learn knowledge outside of a structured college. But the key is a degree gets you indoors where you can't go into other doors without that degree. I found that out. I'm from the inner city. I was actually homeless in my youth. I was homeless when I was a freshman in college, and freshman and sophomore year. And there are certain doors I could not get into until I got my college degree. A lot of the doors that I've walked into now, I would not be in those spaces. I'm a university professor, I'm an author. I post my book. I just finished a novel. I write for NPR, National Public Radio. I'm a journalist there, a blogger. And so I would not be able to walk into those doors if I had not had my college degree. But at the same time, I do want to say, Asia, there's a lot of, some alternative routes too that I tell people, not necessarily this group, because this group is kind of on that college track or in college or finishing college. But there's a lot of, there's a lucrative, the lucrative trades like plumbing, carpentry, auto mechanics. There's a shortage of those workers, because a lot of people maybe go towards college that may not really be a good fit for college. But for this group, the university has empowered me. I've been to Paris. I've been to travel internationally. I've been to Mexico City to do research. Kid from the hood. So my whole mantra is pay it forward, purpose driven. My whole existence is to help other people. But I want to be empowered so I can empower other people. So did I answer your question? I kind of can get philosophical there.
I wanted to say thank you for presenting that option, presenting that students have different options. I want to emphasize education with you because you're an educator, but I also want to, give you the opportunity to tell students, well, this is the other routes that you have. If you're not the most interested in one thing, you don't have to shut yourself out and think that, okay, well, I can't be prosperous in life, or, I can't prevail in my life anymore. There's plenty of options out there for you. So
Sure.
I wanted to take my next question for Nana, and that is, what do you think students, or what confidence do you feel like you've gained from being able to share your work with the public?
Well, I think overall I've just gained confidence in my voice. Before I started putting my work out there, I was doing a lot of listening, which is equally as important. But I think if you shouldn't only be listening, you should be taking what you hear, taking what you see, making and formulating your own opinions, and then putting them out there, because everything is a discussion, it should be a discussion. And if there's no one to discuss with, there won't be a discussion. So I think be informed and then kind of put yourself out there, whether it's creatively or just in any way, put yourself out there.
Thank you. So one more question for you, Nina, is, how did you hear about the magazine and how do you apply? How do you get involved? I know that Nandini left the link here for us for Telus magazine, but how can students get involved?
Yeah, so you can, if you're a youth, if you're a teen, you can apply to be a part of the editorial board. I think, if I'm remembering this correctly, I think applications are due in August. So I think all you need to apply is a couple of short responses, some samples of your work, and a recommendation. So definitely apply if you're interested. And if you're not interested in being a part of the board, you can still submit to be featured in our next issue. And I think if the timeline is consistent with this year, the open call should be open early next year. So there are plenty of opportunities to be involved. So don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you. Thank you. So I have the same question for both Jalen and Janiyah, and then I have another question for Dr. Child. So Jalen and Janiyah, how did you all hear about the Docent Program? And it's not a very long application, but what was the application process like for you?
Well, my mom, since we had been to the National Underground Railroad Freedom Center before even applying, my mom had seen it and introduced it to me, and she asked, like, do you want to, get involved with this? I know you're very much interested in civil rights, and especially after, doing the independent study project in 8th grade, which is the thing that even kicked me off into wanting to learn more about civil rights and as well as other topics around that area. And the application process itself, I would say, it wasn't too hard. I got recommendation letters from actually just like 2 history teachers. My 8th grade teacher, which is a teacher I did the independent study project for, his class was pretty hard, if you'd think it. And then my 9th grade U.S. history teacher, which I had a good relationship with. And I remember even at the end of the year, the website that I created, which was by Independent Study Project, I had a video from it that I wanted to show the class, and he actually used that for an assignment for a different class. So I was like, wow. I mean, the website is like a year old. It's kind of messy. It has a lot of information in it, but it's not like a professional. It doesn't look like a professional website, but I was surprised by that. So I got recommendation letters from those. And what was the other part of the application process? I think you had to do some other writing piece as well.
Short form writing questions, yes.
Yeah, and that wasn't too hard either.
Okay, good. Naya, what are your thoughts? Thank you, Jalen. Who recommended you to be in the Docent Program, and what did you feel about the application process?
I was recommended to the Docent Program through my church. It was a couple of people actually, but I believe the main person was maybe Miss April Moore. I hadn't really ever heard of it before. We were kind of rather new to Cincinnati. We're from Michigan. So, and I know that we had been to the Freedom Center a couple of times, but nothing really really big because it's kind of a ways out. It's like 30 minutes out, so we don't go there that often. But after hearing about it, I applied and I met with Miss Novella. Actually, it was like the day of the first meeting is when I applied actually, because and I had an interview there, and it was really good actually. I had just got back home from, I had just got back home from Europe, and when I got back, people were telling me about this program, and I was really excited about it. And I just applied. The application process really wasn't hard. It's kind of like any application. It makes you think a little bit, like answer some good questions. But it was really nice and I really enjoyed it. So
Thank you. So I just wanted to ask you all that. So for our audience to understand, there's different ways to get involved in your community, and there should be some people around you, who want to propel you into a positive space and make sure that people can highlight your, abilities and your talents. So, try to surround yourself with people who will encourage you and, give you opportunities. So, Dr. Childs, that leads into a question that I have. So you're an author and you just released a book telling stories about the Underground Railroad. Why is this era so specifically so important for students to learn about resistance and social justice movements? And I have one more question for Nina as well when you get done.
I have to unmute. I wanted to also say, firstly, thank you, Asia, for putting this together and highlighting youth voices and allowing the youth to educate us. So it's really important. I wanted to say that at the outset. And you, some sort of ask that question again.
Yeah, so you just released a book telling the stories of the Underground Railroad. Why is this era specifically so important to learn about resistance and social justice movements throughout America?
Well, Nietzsche said, those that forget their history, the philosopher Nietzsche said, those that forget their history is death, their destiny to repeat it. There's a lot. And then also, not only is it about forgetting history, but it's about even recovering history that's been lost. There's so much of African-American history in the freedom struggle that has been hidden, that we are still discovering. For example, I'm a part of a archaeological dig, our history department, our public history department at Northern Kentucky University. We are uncovering sites of old African-American schools in Kentucky, been part of conversations about uncovering old Black churches. So there's so much information that we don't even know. And then specifically about the Underground Railroad, the narrative is the Underground Railroad was largely, the false narrative was largely conducted by white folks, but it was a Black enterprise, a Black entity. The African Americans were very, very instrumental. We had white allies, and that's important to highlight, but the narrative is always cast of white folks helping us. But the Underground Railroad is an empowerment story. Furthermore, the whole reason that the museum was built is because this is one of the most historic areas for the Underground Railroad in the country. A lot of people don't realize that. In our own backyard, a lot of the activity took place along the Ohio River, in places like Ripley and New Richmond, Ohio, and so many. And then Harriet Beecher Stowehouse is right there in Walnut Hills, Cincinnati. And so our history is local. And then also, let me say this, African-American history is American history. A lot of times our history is presented as an afterthought, even in our textbooks. When we're studying the Revolutionary War, when we're studying the Civil War, there's a couple of paragraphs, if we're lucky, on the Black experience. But we need to reclaim this history, help our fellow Americans understand, whether they're Black, white, Asian, Hispanic, that people of color, their stories is also American history as well. We shouldn't just privilege white history. White history is really important in terms of Abraham Lincoln, Thomas Jefferson, et cetera, and so forth. But the stories of Sojourner Truth, Harriet Tubman, different ones, Frederick Douglass, and so many others I could name, need to be told as well. So the Underground Railroad is so important. So what I did with my novel, I just posted a couple of links there. I wrote a historical fiction novel. A colleague I say it briefly, a colleague and myself were co-teaching a class. He's an English professor in history. And we thought, well, let's write our own novel to tell a story, a historical fiction novel, to teach people about this time period and include some resources. So that's what it's all about. It's written actually for a wide audience. It's accessible from middle grades all the way up to college age. And I just want to say too, I started to say, as a poor African-American child from the inner city who I didn't have a lot of access to books. And so because of that, I really like books. I really like brand new books because I didn't get many books at all in our home. But I was always trying to write stories, always trying to do art as well. And so it's really just a testament that if you put your mind to it, young people, you can do anything. I tell the story so I can empower y'all. I can take it further. Like I like to watch the relays when they hand that baton to somebody. I'm handing the baton to you guys so you can take it further. Just here to inspire. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. As Dr. Child said, he has listed multiple resources on the side for you all to access his book, well, to purchase the book, also to access Democracy in Me. That is a free resource that constantly puts out new information and new blogs. He's also a teacher educator. So for those young people who might be interested in education or just getting more information that is bite-sized and digestible, Democracy in Me is a great place for that. There's also a link for Telus magazine where you can find youth-led work. So Nana, I had a question for you. So how did you find out about this magazine and, applying for it?
Yeah, so I found out through my school. So 2 years ago, this was a new magazine. They hadn't put out any issues yet. So I was part of the founding board, where we kind of put together the website, the structure. So it was a lot of kind of heavy work in the beginning, but now I think it's really great because we can really focus in on the art and the creating rather than a lot of the logistical stuff like making a website. But yeah, I found out through my school and it was a great opportunity. I'm really glad that I decided to click on that link and apply.
Nice. So we could consider you like a founding board member for Tell Us Magazine. So what are your duties for that? Like, what do you have to do as a board member?
Yeah, so as a board member, you're basically in charge of putting out the final product in May. So within the board itself, there are about like 4 or 5 committees, like a design committee, a communications committee, so that way work can be delegated and done efficiently. So within those committees, you're like working with 3 or 4 other people to do different things to help the zine go forward. So as a board member, you come up with the theme, brainstorm about it, vote about it, and then as the year goes on, promoting the open call, contacting friends and teachers about submitting work. And then at the end, it's basically making the zine and formatting it. A lot of design there, color schemes and font and stuff like that.
So Jalen and Janiyah, did you all have any questions for Dr. Childs? And if you don't, there's no pressure. I'm just curious.
I had questions, but they were basically all answered.
Okay.
But I have one question. It's kind of not really related to history, kind of more related to you in general. But what is some of the best advice you've ever heard, and what advice would you give to your younger self?
Advice to my younger self, be encouraged. I always struggled with imposter syndrome because of my background and the neighborhood I came from. So, be encouraged. Don't compare yourself to other people. God put us here for a reason. We have our own lane that He put us in. He put certain giftings in us, and those are supposed to be blossomed in us. And so, don't compare yourself to other people, but keep going. And then a lot of times, secondly, a lot of times we think we have to have it all done by a certain age. Like, by the time I'm 30, I do this, or by the time I'm 25. And then sometimes we look around and we're 22, 23 years old. And we're like, oh my goodness, I got to get this together. Like we have this ticking time clock in our head. But ignore that You know, things will be manifested when they're supposed to be manifested. I like to use the example of my Grandma Moses. She's a famous folk artist. She didn't really get famous until she was 70 years old. She didn't really start doing much art till she was 70 years old. In the college program I teach, the various programs, sometimes I'll have students in their 70s working on degrees. So I guess I would say it's never too late. You guys are so young. You have the whole world as your oyster. Thirdly, stay focused. Don't let anybody distract you. Choose your friends wisely. A lot of the challenges and trouble I got into with the people I hung around with. So hang around people that are successful. If you're going to be around people that are not doing the right thing, make sure you're strong enough to inspire them. If you're not strong enough to inspire them, if they're going to pull you down, separate yourself from those individuals. Don't be too nice and just let people just ride along. Don't let people with baggage just hang around your life, because they don't deserve that. They don't deserve you, your blessing and your talent. But begin to, as greatness requires you to do great things. Greatness requires you to be around certain people, to think in that growth mindset, a certain mindset. You have to be great. You have to walk, metaphorically speaking, a certain way to be great. This is, I'm gonna say this partly because I have a brand new baby, but also I don't require a lot of sleep. I need about 7 hours of sleep because I'm always thinking and writing and planning and doing and trying to be a blessing to other people. Some people can be toxic in your life and they will drain you. You have to, it's not being mean, but you have to be firm and know where you're going and who you are. And begin to say, hey, I'm getting ready to cut you off because I'm not going in that direction. If they want to hang around, then you can inspire them. But if they're going to drag you down, they don't need to be in your life because you're going somewhere. Having said that, life is short. And you can do a lot of things. You can do a whole lot of things. I'm a living witness of that. I'm saying this humbly speaking. I have 2 doctorate degrees. I have 2 master's degrees. And I did a double major. You can, and I'm not old. I'm not that old yet. So you can do a lot of things. You can do much more than you realize. Then I want to say this. I put my contact information in the chat. I'm a collaborator. I love to talk to people. You guys made me smarter by being in this session. So if you guys are so inclined, send me an email. We can plan, we can co-write, we can write things. If you guys want to do stuff with the Cincinnati Public Radio, Democracy and Me, if you guys want to contribute articles to that, we'd love to get you involved in that in our podcast, Democracy and Z. So I'm a collaborator. I'm here to be a blessing on this earth. I'm purpose-driven. So I want to be a blessing to other people. That's why I'm here paying it forward. So sorry for that whole monologue, Agent.
No, that's great. That's why I called you here, because I knew that that's what you would give us, and that's what we need. So I just want to say thank you so much to everyone. Jalen, Janaya, Nana, you all are like seriously wonderful. You inspire me. And I hope that you all have been able to inspire other students, adults, your families, your parents by being here this morning. Hope that we can all keep in contact in order for you all to be involved with the Freedom Center. Dr. Childs is a great resource. Autumn, Lawrence, Will, they all, have, you can access them. So thank you all for being a part today. It truly is a great start to my day and my weekend. So this is recorded, so you all can share this back when it's done. Share this with your family, your friends, put this on your electronic resumes. You all are panelists. So thank you again. Have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you all soon.
Thank you, Agent. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you to our audience. Also, thank you to our PNC sponsor for helping to make this possible today. And come in to see us to the museum. And our Teen Docent Program is still accepting applications until tomorrow. So tell your little brothers and little sisters that they can apply, and you can also apply to Telus magazine. So thank you,
Awesome.
everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Nana and Jalen and Jay.
Yeah. Wait, Dr. Charles, before we leave, I have one question. Just one question. Do you think personally that student activist organizations looking to eliminate racism and racial inequalities, like the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, are needed today?
Yeah, I'm gonna try to make it short. I'll answer. I'll put on my historian's cap for that one. Most of the movements, even in ancient times, were conducted by young people. Now I'm a Christian, so I'm gonna use a biblical reference. Disciples were not old men. People that like John that wrote lots of the Bible, he was not an old man. So think about this. He revolutionized the whole world. He's a young person. You look at the Reformation. You look at the Revolutionary War. Those folks weren't old men and women. Right? They were young people like yourself. If you look at all the great movements, you need youth and you need energy to bring about change. Not to say that the elderly can't do their thing and write and influence. So we need leaders, we need wisdom, but we also need the youth. And historically, it's always been the youth that has been at the forefront of movements. Harriet Tubman, we see old pictures of her, but there's a picture of her that was young. She wasn't 70 years old, going back into the South, rescuing people, going 19 times. She wasn't 75 years old. She was a young person like y'all. She might have been a little older than y'all. Dr. King, when he started out, he was in his 20s. And so, yes, of course, we need the youthful energy. The age is young. She's doing this because she got that energy. I can't put all this stuff together. I just step in line with her whenever she called me. I was like, I got you. I got kids now. My wife had died. So y'all do it, okay? So yes, for sure, we need the youth movements, yes.
Thank you, that's all.
Thank you for your question.
Yes, that was a great question. So all of these folks are still available. So if you didn't get your question answered today, get the information out of the chat box. Everyone has dropped something to make themselves available. So thank you all again so much and have a wonderful Saturday.
Thank you so much.